Welcome to the C5I Compass GenAI webinar series on the challenges and opportunities in managing operational labor. In today's session, we will cover several important topics, including identifying key labor issues within supply chains and retail stores, insights from extensive research that places store managers at the heart of the findings, exploring how GenAI can be applied to address these labor challenges. A little bit about C5I. We are a pure play AI and analytics player combining human perspectives with AI to deliver trustworthy intelligence, driving business impact at speed and scale. Our mission is to harness and enhance human potential through AI and analytics, utilizing it to create transformational impact for businesses and society. And our vision is to rank among the top 5 dedicated analytics and AI solutions providers worldwide, recognized for our innovation and ability to drive adoption while delivering significant business impact for our clients. Our expertise covers the entire gamut of the decision value chain, encompassing data, engineering, analytics, insights, artificial intelligence, and consulting. So with us today, we have an illustrious guest in Dr. Anant Raman. He's our strategic advisor and UPS Foundation Professor of Business Logistics at Harvard Business School, where he teaches various areas of technology and operations management, and served as faculty chair for the Owner President Management Program from 2017 to 2024. His research work in operations and supply chain management has been published in leading management journals, including Harvard Business Review and California Management Review. An advisor to several CEOs of global retail firms, Dr. Raman has helped multiple retailers and suppliers design and develop decision support systems for supply chain management. Dr. Raman is a co-director of the Global Consortium for Operational Excellence in Retailing, a research group that involves academics from numerous universities and leading retailers from around the world. He has a degree in mechanical engineering from the coveted Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and a PhD in operations management from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome, Dr. Raman.
Thank you, Manish. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all ours. And I lead consulting for C5I. Our group is called the Decision Intelligence Advisory, in short, DIA. Before we dive in some housekeeping items, so the recording of the webinar today will be available on our website, which is c5i.ai. The final 10 minutes will be reserved for a Q&A session. Feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A section. If your questions remain unanswered during the webinar, please send them to us at scalewithgenai@c5i.ai. So with that, let's jump right into the webinar and gain insights from Dr. Raman's expertise. Dr. Raman, can you tell us about the importance of labor in a retail context?
Sure, Manish. First of all, I'm very grateful that we as a group are having a conversation on this very, very important topic. Retail is an important sector of the economy, and retail employment, retail as a sector is a very important employer. In the United States, rough estimates over here, there are over 1 million retail stores and over 40 million people work in retail. All right. So this is a very, very substantial sector, a very substantial employer. And if you actually look further at labor within retail, labor is a very important cost. I'm hoping and assuming there are retailers present or people who serve retailers, retail supply chains present on the call over here. Labor is a very important cost for most retailers. Typically, labor is over 10% of sales, and profit is well below 10% of sales. So if you kind of compare labor to profit, it's financially a very important metric. CFOs pay great attention to labor costs. Any blip, or analysts too, any blip in labor costs gets a lot of attention. The second thing to keep in mind over here is the availability and the quality and training of labor affects customer experience. It's probably, I would argue, having worked in retail for over 3 decades now as a scholar, as an academic, that it might be the single biggest driver of customer experience and customer satisfaction. A good sales or store associate can make or break your experience, even if you find your product or don't find the product, or there is an issue with any other issue that you might have, the customer might have with the store. And yet another factor to keep in mind is we're dealing with, I would argue, the most important element of any retailer or any organization are the employees and the team members who work there. So we're not just talking, as you know, Manish, I've worked on inventory for many, many years. And I could analyze inventory in a very dispassionate way. It doesn't matter whether you got like a blue product here and a green product there. Do what makes most financial or economic sense. But it's not that straightforward with people. So so we need empathy on both the customer side and the employee side. Let me touch briefly on what you have on the graphs that you have over there in front of you, because this is this graph hopefully collectively identifies not only the importance but the challenge of managing labor in a retail context. So if you look at the graph on the upper left-hand corner, and what it reports over there, yeah, thank you for pointing, is the MAPE, is the forecast error, or how inaccurate are the forecasts. I suspect some people in the audience will be very familiar with this metric called MAPE, and some others might not be. But if you're not, just think of it as how inaccurate are your forecasts. And if you start at the right corner over there, our forecasts, these are forecasts generated by the commercial tool that this particular company uses. The forecasts at the year chain level are very accurate. The forecast error is less than 1%. Now, a lot of the executives that I interact with, I have in my classes, CEOs, business owners, they go, hey, it's not too bad. I mean, there's a little bit of fluctuation, but we can deal with it. But if you take that same level of uncertainty, but you look at what happens at the store year level, at the store month level, at the store week, at the store day, and now at the store hour level. At the store hour level, the forecast error is plus minus 50%. So if you're a store manager, you could be planning for sales of 100 and you might have 50 customers, or you might have 150 customers. That's perfectly normal. So that, on the one hand, is demand is highly, highly uncertain. Now, if you go to the northeast corner, right, which says labor uncertainty, the turnover, right? So coupled with demand uncertainty, we got tremendous labor uncertainty. Roughly half the workers a retailer hires will leave within the first year. So only half stay on past year one. So this is a sector with tremendous labor turnover and uncertainty. Retailers are constantly on a treadmill to hire, train, empower, and deliver good service. In addition, lateness is a very, very significant problem in this industry, right? So lateness and absenteeism. I don't need to dwell and dig deep into those graphs over there, but if you look more carefully at it, there is, I think, 10% of the workers on any given shift fail to show up. So there's a lot of absenteeism. There's a lot of lateness, among workers. And all of this makes the task of the store manager really hard. I think the store manager is operating in a very, very turbulent environment. I got plenty of people who come into my classes at Harvard Business School, executives go, oh, my business has become very turbulent, or, well, maybe you should go look at the local store manager. He or she is dealing with the level of turbulence that you have not witnessed. And I want to say one more thing before you or others ask me questions. I know I'm being a little long-winded, but I think this is a very, very important domain, and I hope people pay attention to it. The last thing over here is when I look at retail labor, it's a sector where labor productivity has dramatically improved. Now, labor productivity is a very important metric for any economy. It is what drives economic growth. It's what drives, you know, economic welfare. Excuse me. But and if you look at over the last 3 decades, sales per labor, this is data not from us, but from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sales per labor hour after controlling for inflation has tripled, has more than tripled in US retail. And it's a phenomenal success. And it actually is a little bit one of the reasons we got interested in this domain as students and scholars was what explains this puzzle. Because in a lot of other contexts, we've kind of said, why don't we see the productivity growth that we were expecting to see? But this sector has shown steady productivity growth. And it's not just with the arrival of e-commerce, not just in certain sectors. You see very, very steady productivity growth over time. So anyway, I'll pause right there for you to ask questions or yeah.
This is quite enlightening. So in fact, I would rather have participants answer a question, and you can provide text responses in the Q&A section here. Which of the challenges that Dr. Raman just talked about are also present in your environment? We would love for you to sort of engage and put those as answers in your Q&A section there. So let me move on. So Dr. Raman, on the underlying research, how did you conduct your research? And can you shed some light on that as to what it sort of entailed, and how did you sort of go about it, the magnitude of data that you looked at, etc.?
Of course. So first of all, let me share some background over here, because this is ongoing research. You mentioned in my introduction the Consortium for Operational Excellence in Retailing, and that's been my mentor and friend Marshall Fisher from the Wharton School and I have been running it, or we conceived of it, and a person named Anna Sheen has been running it for the last, I think, since 1998, so almost 3 decades now. And we have numerous retailers, academics. It has served as the foundation for a lot of great work done by some of our younger colleagues and doctoral students. And I think over time, worked on assortment planning and inventory optimization, store level execution, incentive alignment. The list goes on and on. Obviously, with many talented doctoral students and young faculty and 30 years to work on it, we probably produced something, But recently, I think it started. I particularly got really intrigued with retail labor. And I thought we needed to bring the same level of academic rigor to retail labor, to the study of retail labor, that we did to domains like retail inventory or retail pricing or retail assortment or even retail location. I was very fortunate that at that time, there was a young, very talented, incredibly talented doctoral student, Caleb Kwan, who also got intrigued by this topic. And, I think he's essentially led this work. I've been a cheerleader and bystander. Caleb is currently a professor at UT Austin. And this research that much of what I'm showing, and I've already shown a little bit of his research, all that is based on ongoing research that Caleb is conducting. Caleb will be posting his findings. He posts his papers, things like that, on his website, calebkwan.com, that anybody can access. We love to hear from you. So please, if you're open to reading academic articles, please do so. All right. Well, once we got intrigued by retail labor and retail labor productivity and retail labor management practices, the nice thing is we had CORE and we had many retailers. And I can't tell you how exactly we got the data, but we got this incredible data set. And this incredible data set has data on over 1 trillion shifts from, I don't even know how many retailers, thousands of stores, maybe more like maybe more like 100,000 stores, down to which worker worked on which shift and what task did they do in each shift, which allows us to unpack what was going on. That then allowed us to say, how do stores manage in this very difficult environment? And probably will let us answer the bigger question. So why did they become so much more productive over 30 years?
Absolutely. Quite quite a lot of data you must have looked at for to be able to come up
Well,
with this kind of research.
yes, and Manish, yes, we've looked at a lot of data, but
Yeah.
sometimes, but often when we're presenting these graphs, we're doing it on a subset of the data, so it's not, we might do this based on retailer A or retailer B. As you know,
Yeah.
comparing data across retailers, you have to be very, very careful. And one of the things that, especially for a young scholar like Caleb, he needs to be very precise and likes to be very precise. So I think we're going to say, okay, these are representative large retailers. We're not talking about somebody who operates one store in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about large chains. But we will take subsets of our data to illustrate some of our observations.
Absolutely. So that takes us to the meat of it, which is what does your research reveal on how retailers manage under uncertainty and ever-growing complexity? We would love to hear about it.
And I think this. I know we want to hear from from the participants in the audience at various points, and this particular, I'd preface this by saying this is how Caleb and I have organized our thoughts right now. But if you think that there might be better ways or it is inappropriate for a broader context, let us know. We'd always love to hear from you, either during the call today or even later. But I think we had identified 4 ways, because in some ways, when we've shared this observation, that look, retail stores have become way more, with our academic colleagues, for example, that this is an interesting sector. Very big employer has become dramatically more productive while facing tremendous challenges. Labor uncertainty, demand uncertainty, the list goes on and on. And a frequent response from many of our colleagues is, how did they do it? All right. And we got that question so many times, and it's nice to get these questions. We went back and initially we were like, oh, I don't know, But then we looked at our data and said, can we figure out some things they're doing? And I think in the introduction, you said the store manager is crucial. Yeah. All right. In some ways, this work, or this piece of Caleb's work could be considered an ode or a celebration of the store manager. They need to be heroes in not just the chairman of the Federal Reserve, but the thousands of millions of store managers out there. So, excuse me. So I think we identified 4 things they appear to do. 1, they anticipate fluctuations in demand. And here was the interesting pattern that Caleb found. They were able to do it better than commercial software. Now, I'm not being critical of commercial software. I think it's, but it's more, it's not a criticism of anything. It's just like store managers know something. And as we kind of delve into the data, we can understand why that might be the case. The second is they react quickly and frequently. It's not that they make a schedule and sit back. New information becomes available to them. They know something about demand, something about supply, and they are tweaking their schedule. They do it over and over again. And sorry, one digression over here. I have studied fashion inventory for many, many years. And I noticed, and I think most supply chain managers realize that there's a big difference between the companies that get it right and those that get it wrong. By the way, that includes even technology products, right? When I mean fashion. So the companies that do get it really right are companies like Zara. And it's not that they're geniuses who can figure out what 18-year-old women are going to wear next year. They can't. Nobody can. Yeah. But what they do is they have a guess and then they tweak and they react quickly to new information. And good store managers do precisely that. The third thing they do is they nurture their teams. No store manager is superwoman or superman. They cannot run the store themselves. And they recognize that particularly their long tenured employees are valuable. I apologize for the cough. And finally, this is the last one that I don't think anybody, to my knowledge, has acknowledged, and it really needs to be celebrated on the part of store managers. They act as the buyer, as the buffer of last resort, something I will explain as we get down to talking about the last one. But let's start with may I continue, Manish, or do you want to?
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Yeah, but let me start over here with the very first one. Okay, this is anticipate the fluctuations in demand. All right. So one of the things that intrigued Caleb and me and bothered the providers of the commercial software was store managers override a lot of the schedules. They were getting these schedules and overriding them. And of course, one of the programmers said, "Why the heck do they do that? They must be stupid, they're dumb, whatever, you know." So maybe they don't use those words, but but the sentiment was there must be something wrong. They shouldn't do it. We've, after all, put in a lot of resources to come up with very sophisticated algorithms. And then if you go to the upper right-hand corner over there, the relationship between store visits and overrides. One of the things is when store managers add, are they smart about when they add labor, or are they smart about when they remove labor? Typically, what will happen is, the commercial program will develop a schedule for me, right? And it might have, 8 hours on Monday and 10 hours on Wednesday and 6 hours on Thursday. I'm just making up numbers. But the store manager moves that the labor around. The question is, does he or she move it around in a way that is aligned with how traffic fluctuates? So if I move labor from Wednesday to Friday, was traffic on Friday higher than expected? And was traffic on Wednesday lower than expected? I think, and what you see over there is where they add labor, the traffic is higher. So they're very good at tweaking. So they tweak often, but it's not that their tweaks don't add value. I'm not saying that all their tweaks add value. That would be a little ridiculous for me to claim. But on average, their tweaks are adding value. So we kind of dug a little deeper, talked to experienced retailers and store managers and said, what could be going on? What are store managers aware of? And this could even get interesting, Manish, as we talk later about what are the opportunities for technology? Because technology has come a long way. I truly believe that. But store managers are aware of a lot more information. They are aware of whether the competitor is running a promotion or not. They are aware of what the weather pattern is, whether there's a hurricane right now or expected next week. Or they might be aware of construction outside their store, so on and so forth. And these are typically, at least with this commercial technology that we're looking at, that wasn't taking that into account. I realize I'm short of time, so let me just, on this particular question, so let me just quickly kind of talk about the other domains, right? The other areas. If you can go back to the previous slide, I'll just touch briefly on the lower slide over there. One of the things is they tweak often, all right? They have to tweak often just because they might make a schedule and then a worker quits, or a worker says, I can't come on Monday. And one of the interesting domains that we can study is recently there's something called the Fair Workweek Law that has been passed in many jurisdictions in the country. And when that happens, if you stare at the graph on the right, you see that managers give more advance notice. Well, because not giving advance notice is expensive. It doesn't mean they completely drop their last minute requests. What also Caleb's research shows is that by not making these last minute requests, that it leads to a significant drop in sales. So the flexibility is valuable. If you can switch slides, I'll quickly run through the other points over here. And look, a domain that we can look at over here to understand how they nurture the team is we look at time off requests, or Caleb looks at time off requests. And you see that 82% of the time, the store manager approves the time off request. But there's more nuance and subtlety, including, I won't dwell. Of course, longer ones are less likely to be approved, blah, blah, blah. But the one that I find really intriguing is the requests from more experienced employees are much more likely to be approved than the ones from less experienced employees. The last thing is, if you can, I know I might be out of time, but I think this is really important. If you can, do we have another slide, I think, on that? Yeah, this is important because I didn't explain buffer of last resort. So and I've shadowed plenty of store managers and know this to be personally true, that if all else fails, the store manager absorbs the uncertainty. And what Caleb documented over here is what is the variation, standard deviation of hours and the standard deviation of start time. And notice over here that it is the store manager in this context called the general manager who has the greatest uncertainty in their schedule. It is not the associate who's on the right-hand corner. It is the store manager. So it's not that, at least at this level, in the level of the store, that the store manager has a 9 to 5 shift and the associate is absorbing the uncertainty. Associates are also, I don't mean to downplay what associates are doing, but the store managers are the ultimate shock absorbers.
That's fascinating. In fact, the entire analysis, and I'm getting some questions which I'll get to in the Q&A section. So thanks for sharing your questions, participant. One more question from our side to you, participants. So which of these levers that Dr. Raman talked about does your organization use, and are these findings consistent with your experience in retail or elsewhere? Do comment on that, please. Moving on. So what can retailers do? What are some of the managerial prescriptions, Dr. Raman, according to you?
Yeah, so, well, we got 3 over there listed, but again, I think the audience might have many more interesting ones. Okay. So let me start with I could start with number 1 or number 3, and I think they're just equally important, So let me start with number 3. I think, particularly for retail, corporate office, retail executives, supply chain executives, I myself worked at Unilever many years ago. We don't understand what the store manager is going through. And I think part of the frustration for store managers is nobody understands how difficult my role is, right? And I think, and we want to do that, because I think empathy is about respect, all right? And second is because that then allows you to come up with better solutions, including technology. So let me touch upon technology over here. And Manish, you might have some views on this as well. But I think in terms of using technology to support the store manager, we've barely scratched the surface. I love a lot of the new tools. Don't get me wrong, guys. If there are any tool providers, I love what you're doing. But I think the road ahead, there's so much more that can be done. We just talked about taking intelligence from multiple data sources, for example. Can you combine past seasonality and historical data with pricing information from merchandising data, with weather pattern data, with competitor? And any store manager knows to do this. I have shadowed so many store managers. Of course, they know this. They wouldn't survive otherwise. Right? And that's why they're overriding. Look, if they are overriding 2/3 of the recommendations from complex software, I think there's a lot more. I don't want to be critical of commercial software, but there's a lot, you can get a lot better. Crucial over here is I think we need cleaner data. One of the things that we found in retail and overall is these technologies rely on accurate data, and there is a lot of inaccuracy in the data. And but management can play a very significant role to clean the data, because that enables processes and technologies to then support the store manager. Because the data are inaccurate, then the schedule's wrong, store manager spends a few hours tweaking those schedules. Not a good use of anybody's time. And it's frustrating, for at least the average store manager. So I put 3 domains, but my personal view would be, please start with empathy and understanding. This is a hard job, guys. Most of us would not be able to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely fascinating. So, audience, do you agree with some of these recommendations? What are some of the other recommendations that you would have for retailers or for other operating managers that are dealing with uncertainty in their operating environment? So, would love to hear from you on that as well. So then pivoting to another question, which is on the subject of AI and Gen AI. How do you sort of apply AI, Gen AI to optimize the labor challenges in retail stores and supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's been tremendous progress in the few decades that I have been studying retail. I mean, the tools have gotten a lot better. It was retailers used to, if you're a store manager or even a merchant, you often were flying blind previously. We've come a long way since then, But I think there's the technology can get a lot better, is one that we talked about is drawing insights from multiple data sources, or I guess what you're calling connected intelligence. And I think you can, Manish, you and I have had many conversations about it, and it'd be wonderful to hear from you. But the other thing over here is, in terms of developing technology, is you recognize that what the store manager needs is an iterative tool. It's not like I gave you, look, I'm an operations researcher. I love to develop optimization algorithms, all right? And in my mind, it's optimal. I don't need to touch it again. No, but the circumstances have changed. You need to tweak it, all right? And I think we need to kind of get there. Of course, over time, build the foundation for it with great data accuracy and things like that. But, I think it's, when I talk to retailers, and then I hand over to you, Manish, right, to hear your insights, because that might spur some thoughts from the audience as well, is when I ask experienced retail executives, like at the conference, retail labor productivity tripled over 30 years. Like, what did you guys do? And over again, their answer is, it isn't one single thing. There were millions of small things that happened day after day, and we've just become a lot better. And most of them were not aware that this transition had happened, right? So I think it'd be similar probably, in terms of, technology, how AI, Gen AI, whatever we want to call it, can help. But go ahead, Manish. Yeah.
No, so I would actually, so what you just said is basically a segue into what I was trying to go and build on this. What we are seeing in the market is, that there is a lot of augmentation of data from different functions or sub-functions to increase impact and connect intelligence. To take your example of, let's say, demand sensing, which has a direct impact on the labor demand and the store traffic, can use disparate data like gas prices, weather patterns, track cell phone data, etc., to more accurately predict and optimize labor at the retail stores and the supply chain. The second one, I think, is about democratization of insights, where we are seeing a lot of coalescing of minds happening on AI, Gen AI, AI, ML, and then Gen AI. So let me build on that. Technology today is allowing augmentation and automation of insights generation through AI, ML. And Gen AI is allowing orchestration of actions and decision making using large language models, NLQ or NLG features. retailers, as you know, are swimming in data by applying AI, ML models, and that can accurately predict, diagnose, or predict demand or diagnose root causes of things that are going wrong, and then use Gen AI capabilities to ask questions to the data and get answers at runtime in a nested fashion. So this sort of cuts down information latency and allows much more accurate and nimble decision making. That's how I think what we are seeing is the pivot towards AI ML application and then Gen AI on top of it. The other two or three are important ones are standing up citizen data scientists. So if you're sending insights to store managers, train them, provide them technology support, maybe make them citizen data scientists. They're not people who are coding, but be able to understand what's coming out of the insights and be able to configure some of it themselves in the technology that they're using. And the other one is knowledge management. So learn more from stores using machine learning and becoming successful, and then engage with retail leaders to learn from them. So I would say these are 4 or 5 things that are sort of coming together to create that perfect storm.
Yeah,
I know. So we are almost towards the last 5 to 7 minutes. So there are several questions that are coming from the audience. I'll pick up. We'll just get into the Q&A section, and I'll pick up a few that have come. Then maybe Dr. Anand, Dr. Raman, you can answer those. Then maybe I can also add to it a little bit.
yeah.
So let me see. The first question is, considering the rising cost of labor, how do you see the integration of AI technologies helping to reduce operational costs while avoiding over-reliance on automation, especially in human-centric roles?
Yeah, it's that's a great question. But first of all, you're absolutely right. I mean, labor, the rising cost of labor, the scarcity of labor, right? I mean, this is and we saw the turnover numbers. It costs a lot to train workers. I think something like a 3% labor productivity number improvement is not an aspirational goal. It is required for survival in retail. So if you have to, again, look at the BLS data. I think it's, if Caleb's paper contradicts me, then please go with Caleb's number. But I think it's like 2.83% a year or something like that, which for my purposes is, look, if I need to improve labor productivity at 3% a year, which might not look like a lot, but it's very, very significant year after year. So I would actually tell, and I often tell many of my retail friends, guys, look, you've got to do that simply to keep pace with industry, with the rest of the industry. If not, and retail, by the way, is a very unforgiving business. Net margins are typically very small. So if you make a small error, you can go from a Wall Street darling to bankruptcy very, very quickly. There's plenty of stories like that you can look at and just review the history of the last 10 or 20 years. All right. Remember Toys R Us, remember Blockbuster, remember Barnes and Noble, Borders bookstores. The list goes on and on. Absolutely, I think there is no choice. It's a requirement, and I think Gen AI is clearly the biggest opportunity over here. But I would not discount any of the traditional technology as well. Just let's call it old-fashioned time series algorithms can go away as well. I don't want to come across as a Luddite or anything, but look, they have not been applied well in a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So let me move on to the next one. And this is about so given that store managers act as the buffer of last resort, what are some key ways they nurture and support their teams during periods of high uncertainty or labor fluctuations? How can technology or AI assist in this area without undermining the human element of leadership?
Yeah, I think, and I guess the question would be what is undermining, I suppose, and what is truly, it's different, by the way. So let me back up for a second over here. Store managers have very different strengths. There isn't we can't kind of look at it and say there is one approach that all store managers follow, right? Caleb actually, I think, has an interesting paper over here where he looks at at good store managers versus average versus not so good store managers. And what do good store managers do? But I think good store managers recognize that two employees, and I think I alluded to this earlier. You can take two tubes of, I don't know, Crest or Colgate toothpaste and say they're identical. But two human beings, two employees are not. Maybe one of them can't come in the morning and one of them can't stay late, Store managers understand those differences and accommodate what workers need. They train, and because corporate, as somebody who's worked closely with retailers, corporate can sometimes be unempathetic, to each individual employee. The store manager becomes the source of empathy. I'll pause right there. Manish, you can weigh in. I need to clear my throat.
No, absolutely. I do see, there are other questions as well with respect to the store manager. So another gentleman writes, the store managers often use their personal experience and knowledge to make better decisions than software, what we just pointed out, right? How the question then is, how can companies make sure that this local knowledge is included in tech systems, so both human and AI insights work together? That's something comes a lot to us as well, being an AI and analytics company. I'd love to hear.
I want to throw out a provocative idea because it used to be popular 30 or 40 years ago, and actually, Manish, you and I remember the term expert systems, which was like early generation. And the idea in expert systems was, I'm simplifying, is learn from the expert. Now, I think if we were to give the same, I think the person asking the questions, it's a very astute observation. You're absolutely right. If the average store manager or the not so good inexperienced store manager could quickly get to at least average level, or the average can become above average, then this is tremendous progress. And if we, for example, could we do a game? Could we gamify? I think that's the right term, if I understand it correctly. Show different contexts and see, if I was a new store manager, I would love to see what Frank, the person, or Mary, how do they decide? What are the decisions they make? And then ask them, why did you choose differently? This is how teams in sports have tried to reduce what are called rookie mistakes, right? They create simulators. That's gamification, I suppose. And in the process, extract what the experts, what used to take somebody, 10, 20 years to develop, to learn. If we can teach that in 10 weeks, even 10 months, that would be a phenomenal achievement. But it's not going to happen unless store managers enjoy playing these games or getting into the simulator.
That is true. And I'm getting a lot of questions here. So I know we are almost at it, and I'll perhaps pick up the last two questions and then sort of wind up. So last but one, so from a stakeholder perspective, what are the key metrics or ROI benchmarks you consider essential when evaluating the effectiveness of AI-driven labor management solutions in retail and supply chain operations?
Yeah, so let me give the very basic one. I think we have to look at labor productivity. It is a metric that is changing so dramatically that if you're not keeping pace, you better have a story on how you're going to survive. It's hard to survive, let's say, over 10 years over somebody who has improved their labor productivity 3% a year. All right. I'm going to do rough math over here, but I think if you improve labor productivity at 3% a year, you're probably 50% more productive. it won't be just 30% more productive because it's compounded growth,
Yeah.
So, and that'd be tough to match. But in addition, it can't just be that. It's easy to improve labor productivity while sacrificing customer satisfaction. It just won't sustain. So I'd like to look at, did this enhance customer satisfaction? But really, I would say the most important, if you ask me for a single metric, it wouldn't be either of those two. It would be, do my employees feel more fulfilled? If you're doing all this, and I think there was a previous question, the associate feels less respected, less empowered, less fulfilled, then we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing it?
Fantastic. Okay, so I think you've answered this, but I'll sort of wind up with this one. So managing teams during labor changes can be tough for store managers. How can companies help managers develop skills that blend both their own experience and the new technology tools without making their job harder?
Yeah. I look, I love process. That is why I teach operations management. And a lot of things that, uh, from how do you stock shelves to how do you scan things out, all right, is we need better process. And I think some of these are corporate needs to take over and make sure that if I'm a store manager and I get an employee, that employee has some basic knowledge about how to run a cash register, how to stock shelves, how to clean a toilet. I mean, these are important roles that store associates have, because otherwise it all falls on the store manager. I think technology can greatly help. We talked about simulations and simulators and things like that previously. Better tools to allow me to make better decisions. We're really scratching the surface in terms of what we can do with technology. So I'd be very, very bullish on the path forward. Retail stores, I don't believe are dinosaurs. They are going to be around.
Yeah.
People have written their tombstone many, many times, and it's not happened. They will have to reinvent themselves. But if we do it, if we work on it, we can, you can do a lot better. Okay, so.
Fantastic. So with that, we come to the end of this webinar. Fantastic, incisive, I must say. So thank you, Dr. Raman, and thank you all for participating. With that, I'll say bye. Bye for now.